How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all doing well. Today, I want to talk about how at the end of 2025, I quit my job and I moved to Thailand for 90 days. And I was really not content with where I was at. I was working as an EMT and I just didn't enjoy the work and I was starting to feel burnout. And I felt like I needed some kind of change, but I didn't know what direction that I wanted to go in. So I decided that I was blessed enough to have enough money saved up to where I could just say, let's go to Asia for a little while and see what happens. And I'd always kind of wanted to go to Thailand. I had trained Muay Thai in the past, and I was really just interested in the culture. And I'd seen other people that had done trips there on YouTube and stuff, and it just seemed like a really cool idea. So I decided, why not? So yeah, at the very end of 2025, I think I got there December 31st was my first day in Bangkok. And today I just wanted to share some of the lessons, I guess, that I learned while I was out there, some of the stuff that I picked up on, and some of the stuff that I brought back with me. So, the first thing I have written down is being alone in a new environment turns down the noise. It doesn't solve your internal issues, but it helps you see them clearly. So, when I first arrived in Bangkok, the first thing that I noticed was how quiet everything felt. Um, and I don't think you'll have this experience if you are going over to a foreign country just to party. If you start indulging in just stuff that distracts you, you're not going to have the same kind of realization. But if you go there with even like a little sense of reflectiveness, you'll probably feel the same way because for the first time in my life, I had zero obligations and I had nobody around me that I knew and I had nobody telling me what I needed to do for the day. And it was just like complete and utter freedom. I had enough money to spend, I had all the time in the world. And it was the first time I ever got to ask myself, like, what do I want to do with my time? And that was really it was really liberating in a way, because I felt all the stress from my old life kind of fall off my shoulders, and I just could think clearly about how I wanted to spend my day. And what came with that was a sense of clarity about like my insecurities and stuff. Like I could see the thought patterns that I had been constantly replaying a little more loudly and a little more vividly. And you kind of gain like an outsider's perspective and you think, "Oh, there's that thought again. Oh, there's that feeling again. There's this," and they keep repeating themselves and you realize that all your thoughts are kind of just looping programs that you have on repeat. And so it's pretty cool to be able to see them from that perspective and get a better grasp on, how they're kind of running your life and stuff like that. Um, so it yeah, it helped me kind of lock into a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with. And it didn't solve my problems, like I didn't move over there and then magically become an entirely different person. That's something that comes when you rapidly change your behavior, but it did help me to get a little bit of a grasp on, what I was going through and why certain things were stressing me out and why I was behaving the way I was at home. And I never would have got that perspective if I didn't leave. So that was the first thing that I noticed when I first got there. And the second thing I have is fear works as a great compass. There's always something rewarding on the other side. So, yeah, everything that I did when I got to Thailand, I was kind of afraid to do. I Once I got over there, I shaved my head, which I was terrified to do because I used to have really long hair. And once I cut it, I realized that my hair was not that important to me, and I didn't look terrible, and it was kind of freeing in a way. Um, and then when I first pulled up to the Muay Thai gym in Thailand, I was terrified. All these fighters and people that don't speak good English, and it's a little bit intimidating. But you feel that fear and you move anyways, and you walk into it, and then you meet some of the coolest people in the world, and you have some of the best experiences. You you just kind of walk forward when you feel that resistance, and then something good is always on the other side. Like I played soccer with some locals while I was there at this little soccer club, and I hadn't played soccer since high school. It had been like 8 years since I played, and I was so terrified to go and show up and see, just expose myself and see how bad I would be at it. And I was terrible, I got nutmegged on the first play of the game, but it was awesome because I've wanted to play soccer for a really long time, and that's something that I had kept myself from because I was afraid to do it. And so, and again, I met some great people, had some great conversations, and had a lot of fun just being able to laugh at myself and not take everything so seriously. Um, and even just going to Thailand in general was something scary, getting on a plane by yourself for a 14-hour flight to a country in Asia that you hardly know anything about, and then getting off that plane and having to navigate, how to spend money, how to learn phrases in the local language, how to talk to the local people, and just navigating a completely different world. It really shows you that you can do a lot more than you thought you could do, just by getting outside of your comfort zone and doing something that's, that makes you afraid. Um, and yeah, if there's fear and a little bit of like a feeling of excitement at the same time, that's a good indicator that something you should do, which is what brings me to my next point. Environment is powerful for changing habits. Being surrounded by total unfamiliarity is a great way to build something new, but if you aren't careful, you'll fall right back into old behavior when you return. So, this was a big one for me. When I got out there, it was really easy for me to kind of let my old habits fall away and to start building new ones because your environment is sort of a mirror for your behavior. And what I mean by that is if you have some deeply ingrained habit, it's directly linked to your environment. So you're more likely to do the same bad things if you're staying in the same bad place and surrounded by the same people. If you've built an identity around these habits, it's going to be incredibly hard to shake that in the same environment because it's being reflected back to you by your surroundings. And when I got to Thailand, it was a completely different mirror. I didn't have the same routine conversations that I would have with my family. I didn't have the same bedroom. I didn't have the same backyard. I had a completely new open world, and it was much easier to impress upon that the kind of lifestyle that I wanted to live while I was there. So I was really focused on training. I was eating clean. I was meditating a lot. And it was just so much easier to build those habits than it was back home. But the problem with that is if you don't ingrain them hard enough, you'll come back home and you'll fall back into the same patterns immediately, which is what happened to me. Like I got back and I immediately fell off my training. I started drinking more. It just, yeah, everything that I had built there didn't fall away because I kept that same awareness, but it was much harder to keep that momentum going once I got back home because I wasn't careful, because I didn't expect to be pulled back into, my old environment that easily. Like I thought I had changed, but then I realized how much of it is just tied to your location. So yeah, but I still have that awareness. I have that awareness of, what how easily it is to get pulled into that, and now I'm starting to get back on track. So yeah, that was a very helpful thing that I learned. And the last thing I have written here is there's no perfect way to live. When traveling solo, you meet people who've lived wildly different lives than anyone you've ever met before. Trust your gut more than what others tell you. So this was a really interesting one for me. Just being in a completely different city on the other side of the world, you meet people that you never would have thought you'd met. You have conversations with people that have lived entirely different lives than anything you've ever experienced before. People that make money in surprising ways, people that have traveled the world, people that have been through hardships and just it really opens your eyes to what's possible, because if you stay in your hometown and you stay around the same people and the same environment, you kind of get accustomed to that way of life and you get accustomed to that way of being. And it's sort of, what's the word? It just narrows your perspective of what's possible. And you start to believe that this is how life is, this is how life should be lived. But in reality, there's a million different ways that you can go about living your life. There's a million different options, You never have to be stuck to one path. You always have the option to change and to choose something different. And I would have never been able to experience that firsthand if I never left my hometown and went somewhere new. And so it really opens your eyes to what's possible, and it makes you wonder what kind of life you could live if you decided to break the norm and do what your gut is telling you as opposed to doing what your family thinks you should do, or your community or society or social media or anything like that. So yeah, go with your gut, because working on the ambulance, I could have gone down that route. I could have became a fireman, and I would have gotten all the things that people say that they want. I would have gotten respect. I would have gotten a good paying job. I would have gotten recognition from my family. Everyone would have been proud of me, but it didn't feel aligned. It didn't feel like what I wanted to do. And my gut was just telling me, like, you need to leave. This is not something that you can sustain long term. You need to choose something different. And even if you don't know what that thing is yet, you should listen to that gut feeling always, because you're going to end up stuck and you're going to end up living a life that you don't want to live. So yeah, trust your gut, man. Go with what you feel as opposed to, what other people are trying to tell you. And it's incredibly rewarding. I'm still learning how to do it, but I wouldn't trade my experience in Thailand for anything, because I get to live with these experiences for the rest of my life. And, I was blessed enough to be able to save up money and to be able to do that. So if you have the means, if you can afford it and you have the ability to save up money and go, I recommend that anybody do it. At least once in your life. If you have even a little bit of interest, I think you should just roll the dice and go for it, because, why not? So yeah. If you have the means, I would recommend solo travel, because you can learn a lot about yourself and you can learn a lot about the world in ways that will surprise you. So, yeah. That's all I got for today. I hope you guys have a blessed week, and I'll see you next time.